If the Grand Galactic Empire was going to be defined by anything, it was fear, oppression, and cold-hearted ambition. Many of those in high command of the Empire were expected to be able to use these tools as effectively as possible. Otherwise, there was no place for them in the Imperial military. But there was a single man who exemplified the core strengths of the Empire in such a way that even Darth Sidious would consider him close to being an equal with the Sith, and that was none other than Grand Moff Tarkin. This is an incredible accolade to have achieved, and something that we have never seen before. Tarkin needs no introduction because his exploits are legendarily cruel. He would go down in infamy as one Imperial officer to speak to Vader as a peer, to have the ear of the Emperor at the time he desired, and the sole one responsible for the destruction of an entire planet in Alderaan. Darth Sidious enjoyed Tarkin's ruthlessness so much that he gave the man immense power within the Empire. But where does a man like Wilhuff Tarkin even come from? What kind of terrible backstory shapes someone into a cold-hearted machine that would wipe out a planet without a second thought? Someone who would gain the respect of the most powerful Sith Lord that had ever lived without the ability to touch the Force. Today, my friends, we will be examining the origins of Wilhuff Tarkin and what exactly made him so brutal. First though, if you've been enjoying the Star Wars lore, consider subscribing, as we put out videos every single day taking deep dives into a galaxy far, far away. We begin on the Outer Rim world of Eriadu, a planet that was once completely untamed, a place where pirates and raiders were considered insignificant compared to the wild beasts of the land. The ancestors of the Tarkin family had been the first settlers of this grand world. They were the one that tamed the savagery of it, established their own militia and police force, and began building up the civilization that we know of Eriadu to be today. These were the stories that a young Wilhuff Tarkin grew up hearing, his parents proud of their heritage. They were a wealthy family who lived in a compound on the world, but don't think that Wilhuff himself lived in any sort of luxury, despite his parents having massive amounts of income and wealth. His parents gave him the type of military upbringing, making sure that he knew that respect, discipline, and obedience were of the utmost importance. Because of this, all of his family's history lessons went straight to Wilhuff's heart, and he intended to become a powerful leader like his ancestors, with his father also believing that his son was made for greatness. In this same spirit though, Wilhuff's father was a difficult and a hard man, teaching him harsh lessons about survival and fitness. In every instance when Wilhuff sat down to eat, his father ordered the servants to take his food, teaching the boy that something as important as food could be taken from him in an instant by someone more powerful. Wilhuff Tarkin was raised on strength and survival. During an expedition that Wilhuff's father took him on, as well as his brother Gideon, they traveled to the world of Yadu to look for a precious mineral. It had been storming, and Wilhuff and Gideon were separated. When Wilhuff found his brother, he was lying in a ditch after having injured his ankle. There were several wild beasts starting to prowl up to him, and he called out for Wilhuff to get their father. Unfortunately, his calls for help lay on deaf ears. Wilhuff simply looked at Gideon, staring him in the eye, and said that their father was busy, leaving his brother to die. His own brother would be the first of many murders that Tarkin would go on to commit. By the time he was 16, several family members brought him out into the wilderness of Eriadu, desiring to teach him survival and to fend for himself completely, as was custom for the Tarkin family. Wilhuff would have his life put on the line during this test, and he would use his mind to outwit a pack of predators, a lesson which would later apply to hunting pirates and smugglers, putting his skills to great use when he eventually joined the Outlander region security force at the age of 19. Still as a teenager, Tarkin would make a name for himself by outwitting and brutally wiping out the Kuana Marauders. After decoding the pattern in their pirate leader's attacks, Tarkin captured her ship, launching her and her crew on a slow course into a sun. The Outland ships broadcast the suffering of the crew on her group's comm network and destroyed any ships that came to her rescue. Several years later, Tarkin would meet the most important man in his entire life, the most important man in the galaxy, Senator Palpatine. The two were friends nearly immediately, and Palpatine would encourage Tarkin to pursue a field in politics. The young man, however, declined, desiring to instead work to join a proper military academy. With Palpatine's backing and support, Tarkin would get his wish, being sent to a military training program by the Republic in order to continue to make himself known to the wider galaxy. During a mission in the wilds of the world of Halkoyan, Tarkin's commanding officer would go rogue by disobeying direct Jedi orders, causing his entire regiment to get lost in the wilderness. Taking charge, Tarkin would successfully navigate his whole company and guided them back to a rendezvous point, using the skills that he gained as a boy and saving the lives of everyone there. For another several years, Tarkin would climb the military ladder until he was 28 years old. It was here when he decided to actually take Palpatine's suggestion and get into politics, a desire to gain more power. Soon, Tarkin would become the governor of his homeworld, of course being backed by the power of Sidious, with the promise that when Palpatine called upon him, the two would remain allies. During this time, the tensions with the Separatists and the Republic were heating up, and the Clone Wars were about to erupt on the horizon. Tarkin was approached by the then Count Dooku, who invited him to join the Separatist movement as the world was a wealthy planet and would give them a huge leg up against the Republic in a potential war. All they had to do was pledge their loyalty to the Separatists. Tarkin, though, refused, ensuring his homeworld remained with the Republic due to his close relationship with Palpatine. In actuality, Dooku had been sent to do this by Sidious, who desired to test Tarkin's loyalty. Very soon, the Clone Wars broke out, and Tarkin, against the wishes of his aging father, decided not to run for re-election as governor, but instead to resume his military career. During the Clone Wars, Tarkin would ascend to the rank of Admiral, but here, another important transformation occurred. Tarkin rapidly lost his respect for the Jedi who he had once believed to be powerful warriors. He saw that they were inept and disagreed with nearly every facet of how they conducted themselves during the war. Tarkin believed that had he been put in command, he could have ended the war quickly and decisively. To his utter surprise, he believed that the Jedi were weak. To him, the galaxy required a harsh justice. Once Palpatine proposed the plan that the Republic be destroyed and reorganized into the Empire, Tarkin quickly supported his friend, being fully in favor of a more secure galaxy. Tarkin would retain his rank as Admiral for a while until Palpatine would decide to make him the first Moff of the Outer Rim. It's around this time when Tarkin would then write his infamous Tarkin Doctrine. This was a letter to Emperor Palpatine explaining a proposal to create a larger-than-life superweapon, one which would become a symbol of fear for the galaxy. In this letter, he states that the psychological warfare could be used to subjugate most of the galaxy, never having to use real force on them at all. The simple thought of the superweapon would be enough. He used the Star Destroyers as an example of how the common people are fearful of large and imposing weaponry, being more inclined to be obedient under the threat of immense force. Impressed by his insight, Palpatine decided to promote Tarkin to Grand Moff and place him in charge of the Death Star, a superweapon whose construction was already underway and that Tarkin had no prior knowledge of. He was ruthless, cunning, ambitious, and entirely brutal. This was the abbreviated backstory of Grand Moff Tarkin, a man who killed his own brother out of weakness before killing an entire world, billions. But what do you think of Tarkin's backstory, my friends, and how he achieved the nearly impossible, gained the respect of Darth Sidious without possessing the Force? Had you ever wondered where Tarkin came from, and has his backstory impacted your opinion of him? Again, as always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting the channel and the archives today, and may the Force be with you.